All right, welcome everyone. We'll go ahead and call to order the regular meeting for the Whitefish Community Development Board. Today is February 15th, and we're going to ask first off, the agenda item is, does anyone have any agenda changes? But we only have one item tonight, so we'll keep it as is. And secondly, can I please get a motion to approve the January 18th, 2024 minutes?
Make a motion to approve the January 18th minutes.
Thank you.
Second.
All right, the meeting minutes from January 18th have been approved and seconded. And next we have communications from the public, and this is your time if you have something to bring up to the board that's not part of the agenda tonight, so not the one item that's on the agenda. If you have something else, now is your time. You can come up to the podium and state your name and also your address. Nobody's moving, so we will move along. Any unfinished business from anyone? Okay. All right, so we have one public hearing tonight, and that is WCUP 2401 and WPP 2401. Those will be combined in the staff report, but then we'll vote separately on those.
I always forget. Okay, now it's on. So again, there are two applications that, but it's all for one particular project for the Under the Crescent Moon. So the request is both for a conditional use permit and a preliminary plat. The project is for a 9-lot, single-family attached development on 2.5 acres. A little bit of background on this request. Back in 2018, the City Council approved Ordinance 1823, which allowed the applicant to commercially develop a small portion of this property through the conditional use permit rather than through the PUD, because that's how the original neighborhood plan was set up for this particular piece of property. Was that any further development would go through the PUD. The PUD back in the 90s was quite a bit different than how we review projects with the PUD. So the CUP was an attempt to retain the public process like the PUD would have, but not with the same sort of standards because they had changed considerably over the time. So back in, after that amendment to the PUD, the applicant received approval for both their conditional use permit and a preliminary plat for this property in this exact same configuration. Subsequent to that approval, the city was sued by the neighbors, and the city in turn added the applicant as an indispensable party. And then on May 11th, 2021, the Montana Supreme Court ruled in favor of the city and the applicant. But during that time, this application did expire, and so that's why we're back here before you. So again, the request is for a 9-lot subdivision on 2.5 acres. The gross density of the subdivision is 3.6 dwelling units per acre. One of the lots is going to front on River Lakes Parkway, and the remaining lots will front internally on River Lakes Drive. The property is served by all public services and facilities. It is surrounded by residential uses and parks, including a stormwater facility that's to the west that is also part of the city park. We did notice adjacent landowners and advisory agencies. We posted a sign on the property, and the entire application was posted on the city webpage in January. We did post a legal notice the end of January. We did receive comments that were in the packet, and between the time when the packet went out and tonight, we did receive 3 additional comments, so those are in front of you. Folks are concerned with the compatibility of the project within the existing neighborhood, traffic, impact to wildlife, sidewalk shoveling, and other concerns. We do review conditional use permits according to the criteria. I think I'll go through the conditional use permit criteria first and then hit the highlights with the subdivision review. The project is implementing the Lakes Neighborhood Plan, which identified this area as either commercial or residential. The project is meeting all the setbacks, and a lot of them will be reviewed at the time of building permit. Again, the pond to the west of this project is the stormwater facility for this entire lakes neighborhood. And then stormwater from this pond then flows into the Whitefish River once treated. This pond predates the lakes and was likely a wetland at some point in the past. Our water quality protection regulations classify these types of facilities as exempt from the wetland regulations, but does place a 15-foot setback around the pond. There are some fringe wetlands along this area, which is pretty common along the storm ponds. The applicant is proposing, they're working, again, also with the Army Corps of Engineers, but they are proposing to fill a small portion of the wetland, and then they're providing a 2-to-1 replacement ratio for that. We'll request, as part of the conditions of approval, some plans showing how they're attempting to do that. Because the pond and the wetland areas are so close to the lots, just like we did in 2019, we're asking for some sort of fencing or landscaping or something to distinguish the edge of these properties from the wetland areas. Parkland is a requirement of this project, and I'll talk about that when we talk about the subdivision, because that is one of the requirements of the subdivision. This property is well situated to take advantage of many open space and recreational amenities, including Smithfields and the paths along Whitefish River. The project will generate 90 total daily trips. A TIS is required by our engineering standards when it hits 200 trips, so this project didn't require a TIS. Under neighborhood compatibility, these buildings will be required to obtain architectural review and approval, and scale and mass are part of that review. Other standards that will apply to these townhouses is the no garage forward design, and that the buildings cannot be exactly identical to one another. They need to have some variety with a common theme. Again, the density of this project is 3.6 dwelling units per acre, which is pretty comparable to the surrounding neighborhood. The neighborhood to the east is at 2.9 dwelling units per acre. The character of this neighborhood was established with the adoption of the Riverside Neighborhood Plan back in the 90s that identified densities and uses and recreational amenities in this larger area. So we are recommending approval of the conditional use permit subject to 14 conditions of approval. And as far as the subdivision, just a couple of items. As far as drainage, they're proposing to discharge the stormwater into that existing stormwater pond to the west. The city will review the plans, and they are required to meet all the current stormwater standards and need to show that the pond has adequate capacity to accommodate their project. Water and sewer are surrounding the project. All the streets are public streets, and they're complete. The subdivision is required to provide parkland dedication. They're proposing to set aside 0.75 acres where the requirement is 0.19 according to the subdivision regulations. And what they're proposing to do is dedicate that parkland to the city, so it'll just join up with that larger park pond that's to the west. The applicant went to the park board in September, and the park board agreed to accept this parkland. So we're also recommending approval of the preliminary plat, subject to 18 conditions of approval. Again, we're asking for the final wetland replacement plan. We want the parkland to be dedicated to the city at the time of final plat. We're asking for some sort of delineation, whether that be split rail fence or some sort of natural materials or landscaping along the edges of the property where the wetland is being restored. Because this is an area with the potential for high groundwater, we're asking for slab-on-grade foundations and no basements. They will have to have an HOA to maintain their weeds and stormwater facilities. And then this would be valid for 3 years. Can I answer any questions for you?
Does anyone have questions for Wendy or the staff? Toby?
Looking over their their plot of where these houses go, at the very north end of it, on the one picture, there's sort of a small wetlands, which their lot 5A and 5B seem to be directly on top of. Maybe I'm reading it incorrectly, but I'm just wondering about that.
Could you, I'm sorry, I was opening my page here. Sorry.
You want a page number?
No, I couldn't hear what you were saying.
I was saying that it appears to be at the north end of the lot under what is shown here on this one diagram. Lot 5A and 5B appear to be on top of a wetlands area, which is displayed on page 91.
So that's the area that they're going to fill a small portion, and then they're going to offer a 2-to-1 ratio replacement to the north.
Okay. All right. Just, they weren't going to be building the buildings on top of the wetland area. That's on page, 91, I guess. Do you see where I'm talking about?
Yeah, and that's the area where they're going to do the 2-to-1 wetland replacement area.
All right, thank you.
Wendy, is there currently an HOA in the current development? And if this was approved, would these units be a part of that HOA?
I'm not entirely certain how that works. Maybe the applicant could answer that question for you.
Any other questions for Wendy or staff? All right, so now the public hearing will begin, and first we'll hear from the applicant or representative.
Good evening. I'm Kate Walker with Northwest Design Studio, 940 Spokane, Suite 3 in Whitefish. I'm going to kind of summarize the project, and I'm happy to answer any questions, as is Doug Pepmeyer, the civil engineer on the property. We also have the owner here to field any other questions that you might have. The proposed subdivision will create 9 townhome sublots on 2.5 acres. This is well within the growth policy's desired density range. The proposed density is significantly below the underlying WR4 zoning district development standards, which would allow up to 52 townhome units on 2.5 acres, and those of the PUD that overlays the greater Riverside at Whitefish neighborhood plan area would allow up to 77 townhome units. Again, this is just 9 units. The proposed plat indicates that all applicable development standards, including lot size, building setbacks, density, and building design, have all been met or exceeded. Parking is provided according to the City of Whitefish off-street parking standards at 2 spaces per residential unit. The site plan shows a 2-car garage for each unit to meet this parking standard. In addition, the connecting drives and turnaround areas provide additional area for services, deliveries, and guests. Each residence will be no more than 2 stories, which is common among residences in the area. Residents will be grouped in 3 2-unit buildings and 1 3-unit building. While townhomes are not common among immediately adjacent residences, higher density has always been planned for this property. Living spaces and the entryways of the units will be placed in a manner to minimize the garage and improve street appearance. Additional landscape screening will be provided to negate any further visual impact at the street. The shared access drives are proposed to limit entry and exit points on River Lakes Parkway and River Lakes Drive. As Wendy mentioned, at an estimated 90 trips per day, 10 trips per unit, this proposal is significantly below the threshold of 200 trips that would require a traffic impact study. The proposed development is supported by the city's existing services for fire, police, and emergency response, as well as city utilities. The project also emphasizes community and environmental health through its design, with its intended dedication of 32,791 square feet. That's the 3/4 of an acre of parkland to the city of Whitefish to protect the valuable wetlands and improve access to the existing city park. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Any questions
Yes.
from board?
I'm looking at a proposed diagram of all the units. You say there's 9
Yes, sir.
on this page, I don't know, 77 of our document here. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pairs of townhomes.
So you might be looking at the wetland delineation report, and that was done at a previous version of this design.
Okay.
The wetland delineation report was not updated because nothing changed other than the unit count. So there has been a decrease in the number of units from that diagram.
All right, thank you.
Hey, one of the letters not supporting this development mentioned access and egress of the driveways. Is the applicant amenable to changing the access or egress of one of those driveways?
There are only 3 points of access or egress for the 9 units. I don't believe that the fire department would be particularly okay with decreasing that number, given the 9 units. So that is something that we would have to address with Public Works and the fire department to see if they would be amenable to that.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions? John?
One of the comment letters mentioned a huge tree across from their property, and apparently it's on the subject property. Will that be preserved?
All existing trees are intended to be preserved.
Okay.
Any other questions for the applicant? All right, thank you, and if anyone else from your group would like to come up, we'd love to hear from them as well. All right, at this point, we'll open for public comment. So if you have a comment on this particular issue, please come up, state your name and your address, and please try to keep your comments civil and civil. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Missy Johnson, and I'm at 3064 River Lakes Drive. A few questions that came up when I was reading the CUP is on number 4, it talks about the parking locations and layout, and it says parking is located off-street in garages and driveways. My question is, how many bedrooms are these units going to provide? And with the cost of living in Whitefish right now, it looks more like there's one person per bedroom that's residing in condos and townhomes at the moment. And so I'm just questioning where these extra vehicles will be parked. Currently on River Lakes Parkway, there's no parking allowed. And on River Lakes Drive, it is our entryway into our neighborhood. And so I'm concerned about parking and accidents and snow plowing and whatnot in the wintertime. If they're having guests over, where are they going to be parking? My next question is on CUP number 12. I read something about, it says no garage forward townhomes may be built. And so I had a question about that and what that means, because from the plan, it looks as if the townhomes garages are facing the street. And so that was one of my questions, is what does that garage forward townhomes, what does that mean? My second question is regarding the irrigation system along the frontage of this project. It says must be assumed by, and I am assuming that it's under the Crescent Moon HOA. It does say HOA, so I didn't know if that meant they're going to coordinate with our current HOA and be a part of that, or if they're creating their own HOA and they're handling the irrigation with that boulevard area. Currently, right now, the Lakes HOA pays and maintains that. So that was one question. Another question I had was regarding environmental study, if they've had to conduct that with the pond system behind those buildings, what that construction is going to do to that area of wildlife, as I know many residents love that space as well as the springs. Traffic impact is a big one, especially with the Whitefish Music School going in right across the street from them. That is a concern of ours. Let's see what else. I think that's it. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Missy. And at the end of this, the applicant will be able to come back up and address questions that may have been presented by the community. So feel free to come up, ask questions, give your comments, and then we'll continue to move forward. Thank you. Anyone else?
Hi. Thank you for staying late and listening to our comments. And while you're asking for comments, I'll be happy to give them.
Can you state your
My name
name?
is John Lewis, and I
Thank you.
live at 3069 River Lakes Drive. We are on a lake system right now that, in theory, is part of the wetlands that is connected with the pond across from the project that's proposed. I think it was brought up that the Army Corps of Engineers has been consulted on this project. Would I actually be able to ask if a permit 404 has actually been applied for? No. Okay. Well, so from that point of view, I'm kind of wondering what the rush is on this project. 9 units would absolutely impact our neighborhood to the extent that it would increase our residences by over 20% in one sweep. What's the rush? Why 9 units? I know it's been quoted that we could have up to 79 units, is it? That's the first time I've heard that number given, but in reality, most of the lots in this particular cul-de-sac are about a half acre, give or take, 0.45 to maybe 0.55. And on those half acre lots, there are single-family homes. I'm a little concerned that condos built on top of one another are actually going to be built for speculation, and that there are going to be absentee landlords. Absentee landlords come with it problems that the community has to deal with. From that point of view, we have an HOA that may or may not be able to handle a 20% increase in residences right away, right from the get-go. I don't know if there's a plan to actually do this in steps. I don't quite understand building on top of the wetland to the north and then having a 2-to-1 replacement to the north, because to the north is someone's property, it's Mary's property. So I don't think that that's really a doable thing. Not to mention the construction that took place within the last 18 months, right at that square, right at the intersection of River Lakes Parkway where the loop comes around. The whole thing started very small, but then led to a very large drainage project to accommodate the runoff. We're assuming that the runoff is going to go into the wetlands, not affecting the waterfowl that is in this pond. I don't know if DEQ is involved in the wildlife management of this. I don't know that that's actually been submitted, but in general, typically they submit an application, a SPA 124 permit, and then once you fill out the application, they tell you whether or not it applies. I don't know, it's a government thing, but I can tell you that there's 10,000 birds in that pond every fall, okay? I don't know what the impact's gonna be, I'm not a wildlife manager. So from that point of view, I would like these things taken into consideration when you guys make your decision and your recommendations. It just doesn't seem reasonable for this neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Anyone else wish to comment?
My name is Jay Hewitt, 5004 Tumble Home in the Lakes. We just moved here 2 months ago after living in Maui for 6.5 years, so this was quite a big change for us. We chose this location for a number of reasons. First and foremost, because we're skiers, but besides that, we chose this neighborhood because of all the neighborhoods we looked at. This one was very well thought out, and the homes although they vary in size from street to street, we're all very much the same style of architecture. We really enjoyed that and love the house that we have bought. I have no problem with somebody developing property. I was in real estate for 35 years and I'm pretty familiar with all the ins and outs of developing something. My only concern, and I only have this because I've only lived here for 2 months, but building a 9-unit condominium project doesn't seem to fit at all with the surrounding homes. Now, there is a complex at the very opposite end, about a half a mile away, called Montera, which are condos. But they are all included at the other end of the project, right up just off of Montana 40. Makes sense there because they don't come through the neighborhood. Ingress and egress is pretty easy right off of 40. Where this proposed project is going to go in, I don't see that as being really very functional because you're either coming through the hospital, a serpentine route to say the least, or you're coming through our neighborhood to get to this project. My experience with condos, as one of the previous folks mentioned, you have a lot of absentee landlords. Now, obviously 9 units doesn't seem like a lot, but when you have no units of that type right now in that area, it's a huge difference of what's going to shake out in that neighborhood. Again, the aesthetics of that neighborhood right now is pretty standard, beautifully maintained homes and architecturally up to date. I don't see a condo complex fitting into that neighborhood at all. On the plus side, it's always good to have a better tax revenue for the state and for the county and the city. I get all that. But I think that that property would be much better served for 2 or 3 single-family homes, which would be more in line with all the homes that surround it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jay. Next comment, please.
Hi, I'm Julie Hankinson. I live at 3015 River Lakes Drive. And in looking at the plan, the address of the property is on River Lakes Parkway. There's one access from River Lake Parkway and 2 accesses from River Lakes Drive. The one access from River Lakes Parkway goes to one building of 2 units. The 2 on River Lakes Drive go to the other 7 units. So if there are 2 parking spaces per unit, guest parking will need to be in the street. There's no guest parking on River Lakes Parkway. So all of those folks will need to park on River Lakes Drive, which is a funnel for all 60 homeowners who live on River Lakes Drive. So if there are cars parked on both sides of the street, across the street from this new complex, it's going to be very, very difficult for the residents who live there now to drive in and out. It'll be very, very crowded. In addition to that, the soccer fields across the street, when there's a big game, a lot of those folks already park on River Lakes Drive, which would mean that these folks will have no place to park if they have guests. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. All right, any more comments? Come on up.
She actually, my name is Steve Harris, by the way. I live at 3017 River Lakes Drive. Okay. She kind of stole a little bit of my thunder, so that's okay because she's lived there a lot longer than I have. So thank you. I was just going to ask the council to also consider. She mentioned the soccer activities there. So there's more than just soccer there, as I'm sure you know. There are baseball fields there. There are multiple soccer fields, multiple baseball fields. The point being that there are regular tournaments held in that property. And if you've ever been there on a Saturday, Sunday, during the right part of the season, it's one way, one car width on Parkway for exit and ingress. Already, despite the signs. So that's already not being managed well. Okay, so you're inheriting a traffic problem now. It's just not overly consistent. So those folks that live on the loop, or where we do, on River Lakes Drive, when that gets congested, if that corner right there at Parkway, all the way out to by the hospital, the exit by the hospital, or whether you go out by the HOA towards the county road, that is one way out for everybody who lives in the loop all the way out to 40. So 9 units doesn't sound like a lot. And, you know, from a congestion point of view, no. I would echo the comments made about fit. Those are all custom homes. So I would also be concerned and echo the comments about owner occupancy. What's going to happen there? Because as those projects, if they don't survive that well, they will damage the neighborhood.
All right, thank you, Steve. One more comment, thank you.
Good evening. Thanks for taking our comments this evening. My name's Julie Laritzen, and I live at 3053 River Lakes Drive. I agree with some of my neighbors. It is kind of congested on that corner, and when there are tournaments over the weekends, sometimes people from out of town, I've seen them park with a trailer on River Lakes Parkway and just leave it there. The final tournaments of last fall, I think Missy arranged for people to park over on the Springs parking area, a dirt lot they had, and that allowed for overflow, so that didn't happen, but it was a problem at that time. So I agree with my neighbors on that. Some of the clarifications I came with tonight were a couple of things. At the main entrance to the current subdivision at River Lakes Drive and River Lakes Parkway, on the left-hand side, there are posts on both sides of that road. Does the subdivision intend to take down that post on the left-hand side, or will that be left in place where the tree is? So that was unclear to me in the write-up. And secondly, I know that there is a park planned on the backside of the lake at some point. It's in the city plans. It has been there a while. So I would like to know how this subdivision might tie in to that plan. At this point, it would be a good time to consider that piece of it. Are the walkways going to be contiguous over to that piece so that it will tie in at whatever time the city deems it is time to go ahead and make the park into a project? Thank you so much.
All right, thank you. Any more comments? Come on up.
Hi, my name's Mary Collins. I live at 3002 River Lakes Drive. My home is immediately next to this proposed townhome development. I have a list of things. There are several reasons why I believe this conditional use permit should be denied. First and foremost, this undeveloped land exists inside the Lakes subdivision of single-family homes. It's undeveloped land. It has been designated a wetland, and I believe it was 2019 when we went through this process where an application was submitted for a conditional use permit. It was denied, and this wetland is not suitable as a development site. There was a private consultant that was hired, and I can name that person if you like. I was informed the land has been reviewed in previous requests for a conditional use permit by a private consultant. This previously high-density development was denied due to this wetland status. I believe that Mr. Boland or maybe Mr. Scott asked a question about the section of the wetland that is clearly a wetland. It's cattails, and it's immediately down the berm next to my lot. My lot is a 1-acre lot. the private consultant that was hired by the developer informed me that this wetland would need to be replaced there were several conditions, all of which would need to be met before any kind of development would be able to be put on that wetland. I have a couple questions for the developer and the planning board. I don't really understand what those qualifications are. I'm not in government. I don't understand a lot of the requirements that are necessary to designate something a wetland, but it's my understanding that it has been. Have those qualifications been met? Where is the documentation for it? I live immediately next to this proposed development, and I understand that I'm supposed to receive something in writing. I have not received any kind of plot survey, any information at all regarding what this development looks like other than it's proposed. There was a sign that went up 2 or 3 weeks ago that has a scan code, but there's really no information other than this drawing. I'll try to be brief, but the drawing, as one of my neighbors already brought up, the majority of the lot is designated as lot number 3 on River Lakes Parkway. But as it looks on this drawing, 4 of the townhomes face immediately River Lakes Drive. I'm just going to go back to my list here because I have a lot to say, and I'm happy to put this in writing and send it to you. But I would like to request in writing all documentation regarding the wetlands that has been provided and that has been conducted. The Army Corps of Engineers has been mentioned. This wetland is not just aesthetically fitting to the neighborhood, but it is home to migration birds, deer, fox, otters. I've seen every kind of bald eagles. They're just there. We're not the only people that live here. There's traffic, that's wildlife, and we live in Whitefish, and this is a beautiful place, and I understand development, and there's lots more people here than there were in 2019, but it just seems like a townhome development in a neighborhood that is single-family homes is inappropriate entirely, and I personally don't think that the subdivision can handle a subdivision within it, especially at the entrance to the subdivision. It's my understanding that the conditional use permit should be denied because it proposes to develop a subdivision within an existing subdivision. Also, in the 90s was when this supposed precedent was set for the use of the subdivision in the neighborhood. And it's an entirely different place than it was in the 90s, and I think it requires review in that regard. This high-density development is completely unsuitable for the lakes, as it will detract not only from the property values of the existing large single-family homes, but also significantly affect property values and investments of each and every homeowner in the lakes, as well as the cottages and the entire neighborhood. This area will see further road deterioration due to the street traffic and parking shortage that already exists at Smithfield's Logan Health Center Hospital, the new Town Pump Gas Station Access Road, the Springs Assisted Living Center, and the cross-traffic and pass-through traffic of drivers cutting through River Lakes Parkway from Highway 40 and Highway 93, both directions, to avoid the traffic lights. It's become an issue that I don't know what the answer is for that, but there is a lot of traffic. This situation, it's a high traffic situation already for all the sporting events going on at Smithfields. It's not just soccer, it's baseball, it's youth, it's high school, it's adult, lacrosse, soccer, baseball. And then just the recreational, there's kids on bikes, there's pedestrians. This high traffic situation in the last several years has caused River Lakes Parkway being used for significant parking overflow during soccer, baseball, and lacrosse regulation season games and tournaments, and then all of the recreational activities that go on in Smithfields. There's people that, I don't know what they're called, they're kites. There's the things that you ride in and they fly around. I mean, there's all kinds of traffic there that never used to be. The North Valley Music School is slated to be built directly across the street from this high-density proposed housing area. This area cannot handle another high-density, heavy-use development immediately across the street from Smithfields at the entrance to our subdivision. The city plan has been brought up for a pathway to connect all of the walking paths along the river and connect it to the rest of the city. I've been residing at my home since 2010. That's almost 15 years, and I would like to see the city, I would like to understand, as one of my neighbors asked, what is the plan for the proposed park? This is a very small lot. If they fill in the wetland, it looks like the diagram says that they're going to fill in the wetland and put a parking area in there. I don't know if that's from the last one, but there's a circle, and then there's a bunch of, I just don't understand what the marks are. But it's a high-density housing complex subdivision within the subdivision, at the entrance to the subdivision, upon a wetland. And the use is just way too high density. We already have too much high density in that area anyway, right there.
All right, Mary, we'll take just another couple of minutes.
Okay.
If you have anything that hasn't been mentioned before that you really strongly want to reiterate, and then we'll.
I'm going to make one comment, two more comments. The lakes contains high-value homes which raise the value of this particular area of Whitefish. Developing this parcel will greatly devalue this neighborhood as it will hinder views, tranquility, peace, and increase traffic, absentee landlords. It's a high-density housing facility amongst a residential neighborhood. There's a great parcel of land available and currently for sale in the development next to the Montera condos that are designated high-density living. This is for sale. It's not a watershed. Furthermore, developing this land as an alternative for these developers will keep traffic towards Highway 40 and out of this neighborhood. Roads, River Lakes Drive, River Lakes Parkway are already overburdened. This is a critical neighborhood to Whitefish, and keeping these homes of high value with scenic mountain views and critical to the reputation of all and the overall value of our city. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? And I want to remind you as he's coming up that this issue will go before City Council. I believe that's March the 4th. So feel free to come back to that meeting and express your thoughts again. Go ahead.
Yes, my name is James Hartshorn at 3013 River Lakes Drive. I'm basically catty corner to this development. And I know that it is zoned for higher density than the 9 townhomes that are particularly set up for right now. The one issue that I certainly support all my neighbors, and we've been around and around on this thing 3-4 years ago. We would have loved to have had this lot, 2.5 acres, be broken up into individual homes rather than condos or townhomes. And I'm sure that the Lakes HOA would bring them under their wing. But the way it's set up now, it's going to have to be, they'll have to set up their own HOA, be responsible for their own mowing, snow removal, and the snow removal within their development area. The one, at least this proposal, is slab on grade. The last one was going to have crawl spaces, and it is extremely wet there. You need to actually go there to see that, but so the slab on grade would work if they continue to do it and if it's approved to do that. But the northernmost group, it's the 3 condos together. That is probably and that's one that encroaches on the wetlands that we've talked about. And it seems like it's an afterthought to put the three, going two, two, and two, and then on that last one, the three. There's no room for that third one to be there. It's on top of the wetland. And one thing that hasn't been mentioned, all our internet and telephone, there's a major connection box right there behind the garage of that, the one unit that's furthest north, the third of the two condos. And that's a lot of us work from home. And that's where all our internet, all our telephone comes through that box. So there'll have to be some sort of protection for that box so somebody doesn't back into that and knock out all our infrastructure that we need for our work. So, but I certainly support my neighbors, and also it would be great if it would be just broken up into 5 building lots for individual homes. That would be more in with our development that we have than the condo situation. But certainly look at that 9th unit to the north that is encroaching on the wetland and right on top of it. Even though there's a replacement there, there's a reason for all that water that comes down from us and on across there. And any kind of mitigation to do a 2-for-1 some other place, it needs to have that extra run out for that. So if you could eliminate the 9th unit there, if nothing else, that would be very helpful, because I think there's no room for that 9th unit there. So give some real consideration to that, please. Thank you.
All right, thank you, James. Last call. Anyone? Come quickly. Just a moment. So you're at liberty to give public comment, but then, and you can obviously come up and ask a question if you'd like to come up again. And that way, when the applicant comes up, or staff can address that in a moment. So just ask it and somebody will address it
Hi,
later.
John Lewison at 3069 River Lakes Drive. How do you guys pronounce your organization? Is it IO 2.5? Is it IO 2.5 less than 3?
So we'll let
Is
them
it
come up and clarify in a
IO
moment on that.
Part? Is it IO butt?
So, thank,
Okay, all right.
yeah, thank you for the question.
Okay, all right,
and
thank
they'll-
you, thank you. I
All right.
couldn't find it, it was very difficult to Google. Thank you.
All right, so now we'll have time for the applicant, whatever representatives, maybe all of you would like to come to address the various things that have been brought up. Thank you.
Doug Petmeyer, TD&H Engineering. I just been kind of keeping a running list here, so I'll try and respond to most of the comments. First of all and foremost, I just want to clarify, this is the conditional use permit step and preliminary plat. We're not getting a building permit. Nobody's going out and breaking ground tomorrow. Just to clarify, this use is consistent with the growth policy, zoning regulations, PUD, everything. Parking is per city regulations. We've provided what is required. An environmental assessment is part of the preliminary plat submittal. I believe it's a public document. If people want to review it, they can review it. Traffic impact study is not required. We're not even to halfway of the trigger point. City streets are designed for a certain amount of traffic. Certain projects then will add enough traffic that they need to look at whether you add signals, widen streets. That's why that provision is in the city's engineering standards. Again, we're not even halfway to triggering that. The wetland was delineated by a professional. And to answer the question, there's actually 3 items. I know enough to be dangerous about wetlands. I'm not the professional that did it, but there's 3 things that take to be a wetland. You have to have soils, you have to have plants, and then you have to have water. You know, you can have 2 of the 3, but you don't have to have all 3. But there was a wetland, but it was delineated. Yes, 404 permit is a wetland fill permit. That is what is required. It is issued by the Army Corps of Engineers. A 124 permit is not required. A 124 permit is a stream permitting permit for work along a stream for a municipality. What would be, if we were next to a stream, it would actually be a 310 permit, not a 124. Why do we not have a permit? Because you don't apply for permits as part of a planning process. It will be a condition of approval, most likely. To clarify, these are not condos, they're townhomes, they're not high-density apartments. There's been a lot of reference to that. The driveway locations were actually coordinated with the Public Works and the Fire Department. We actually, I believe at one point did have different locations and they asked us to change them. So those are again, per the City of Whitefish recommendations, the engineering staff and the fire department. Townhouses are single-family residences. And finally, there's been a lot of comments about the soccer tournaments. This is not a result of that development. So if you have any other questions for me.
Board member have questions for the applicant at this point?
Thank you.
Okay. Sorry, so only for the board. Public comment is now closed. We stopped the public comment. The applicant is starting to respond. So you're welcome to come on the 4th of March to City Council, but I called last call and then said the applicant was coming back up. So we've closed the public comment, but you're welcome to write a letter to City Council and also to come to City Council. So that part of our meeting is closed at this point. Sorry, questions from the board, but never does the public ask direct questions to each other. Sorry, so we closed public comments, and I'll probably let a member of staff address this.
I mean, now is, the public comment section is done, now is your time to deliberate.
Yeah, so
and
at this
make a
point,
motion and.
At this point, the board will discuss, and you guys are welcome to stay and listen, but public comment is closed. All right, so at this point, we'll turn to the board for a motion on this, and then after that, we'll be able to discuss more fully and have some questions of staff. So we'll have a motion first. Do I have a motion? And we need two separate motions. First, we'll have a motion on the conditional use permit, WCUP 2401. Do I have a motion on that?
I'll make a motion to approve WCUP 24-1 as delivered in the staff report.
All right, so motion made by Toby Scott. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All right. All right. So first was John Middleton seconding. And now we'll open for, I think we'll discuss the CUP first, and then after that, have a motion for the preliminary plat and discuss that. All right. Or perhaps it makes sense to have both motions. Yeah, let's do that. So do I have a motion on WPP 2401?
So moved.
Thank you. John Middleton, do I have a second? Seconded by Toby Scott. Okay, so now we can discuss these as a total package together. Obviously, if there's discussion, particularly about the CUP or the PPP or the PP, we can do that separately. Discussion from the board. Toby?
I have questions. I didn't get a chance to ask the applicant, although she did mention, what's the number of units as a use by right, if there are, for this? I think they said something like 50 in one case and 70 in another and things like that. And is there a number of units allowable by right? And I can approach this to the staff, if you know. And I have a couple of other questions too.
So in the WR4, the base zoning is 21 townhouses per acre, and this is a 2.5 acre property, or 38 rental or condominium per acre.
Okay, and this is WR4?
Correct. Our highest residential zoning district.
Yeah, all right. I wish we had more WR4 in town. But one of the neighbors brought up forward-facing garages. Is it permitted?
So that's part of the architectural design standards, and what we didn't want to see were, and this is now only for townhouses, triplexes, duplexes are now exempt, the garage to be forward of the front foundation of the entrance of the home, and so the drawings that you saw there, it looked like they were pushing the front of the entrance forward of the garage, so that would meet our standards.
And so it's acceptable, the direction that.
Right,
the
yeah,
lo-
I mean,
location
they'll
of the
still have to go
garages.
through architectural review standards and, you know, get all
Yeah.
that stuff
No,
approved, but.
I'm familiar with the whole thing. I've
Right.
been around this block before.
Right, we just didn't want to see front doors hidden from view, hidden from the street, so.
Yeah, no, whatever. And then, I guess this would be a question for the builders. The HOA that they're, I guess, proposing, is it going to be a separate HOA, or will it be part of the existing HOA? Not that it matters to me or us.
Yeah, it sounds
Just
like
gonna-
it would be separate from what
Okay.
was being described.
And then, I was just wondering, one of the neighbors mentioned posts on the road, and are they going to stay or are they going to go? Which, I suppose it's not a big issue at this point.
You know, it would be a good question for the engineer and the landscape architect, but it looks like the entrance is behind those posts. It's on the drawing there.
Okay. And my last sort of questions are, is the staff report that we all get that identifies all of the issues regarding anything, whether it's just a approval or a CUP or whatever, is that available to the general public?
Yeah,
And if so,
that-
when?
We post it a week ahead of time when we send it to you folks. It is on our city webpage
Okay.
under the current land use actions
And
with
so
the
it
entire
would-
application materials.
Yeah, and so then that sort of answers that, or my next question is, can you supply the qualifying documents to the neighbors? Obviously,
Yeah,
they did
they're
not
online,
go
right?
online
They're
to
online.
find out that, yes, the wetlands have been inspected and covered in the building, and all the details that we're privy to, and
Yeah.
they are evidently not, or they haven't made task of that to be able to look up and do the research to answer their questions about this, that, and the wetlands and one thing and another. Okay, you've answered all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Toby. Any other questions for staff or discussion from the board?
Discussion.
All right, go ahead, John.
Well, I have two concerns. First is affordable housing, and the second one relates to the process. There's a lot of issues that are important to the commenters that seem to be kicked down the road to some later date with a later plan. So on affordable housing, I had the impression that Whitefish was short something over 300 affordable housing units. I called Wendy, and she said it's 975 according to a 2022 housing report. So that's my concern with this development, as it seems to be going in the direction of townhouses rather than affordable housing. The WR4 allows multiple family units, even higher density, and those could be affordable. The townhouses are going to be less affordable. So conditional use permit is not a matter of right. It's in the regulations. I think it says it's a matter of grace with the board. And I don't think I can approve this this proposal because it doesn't seem to be going in the right direction as far as affordable housing. So the other concern is that we heard that the entire lake's storm drainage goes into the pond. That could be a lot. And yet a drainage plan for this unit, which must of course consider the storm drainage from all it's already going in there, is to be submitted further down the road. There's also a condition that the pond capacity be calculated. Well, it seems like that should be known now because the whole Lakes stormwater is going in there. So we have this public hearing and then to some extent a public hearing in front of the city council, but these plans are put off to a much later date when the public may not have a chance to know what they are or give input. Also, the wetlands issue is subject to a final wetlands plan to be submitted later. That concerns me also for the same reasons. I'm new to the board. This is my second meeting, so I don't know the process that well, but it seems like the public hearing should have clearer information on these important issues, and certainly important issues to the neighbors. Then the condition is only slab on grade. Well, the staff report says that at page 5, the geotech report indicates groundwater is near or slightly higher than the pond elevation. In addition, this property is mapped with an area with the potential for high groundwater. So the pond elevation can't be that many feet below the grade of the properties. And that concerns me. Would slab on grade, even that, be sufficient if the groundwater in high groundwater times is only 2 or 3 feet below the surface? So that's my other concern, is that these matters should be clearer when they end up before public hearing. That's it.
All right, thank you, John. Any other public comment on, or sorry, not public comment, comments from the board on this?
I just have a question for staff. Was there anything related to affordable housing as part of this proposal?
No. And they're not obligated to provide any affordable housing.
Yeah, and it isn't our duty to request or enforce them. We got that canned long ago.
Right,
with their,
yep, the state of Montana took that ability away from us.
Yeah, okay,
Yep.
so affordable housing and this
Be
being
wonderful, but-
available or not, or for the highest bidder, it is not our concern today. Just wanted to make sure.
So I'll make a few comments. I think that we always have an eye towards affordable housing, and that's something that's in the back of our mind. And there are incentives and variances that happen coming along with that. This is outside of that completely. This is someone developing. Wendy, I have a question. Can you do anything to clarify as far as someone saying a subdivision within a subdivision? This is completely separate from the neighboring subdivision. Is that correct?
I mean, I think it was, way back when it was one giant lot and they did kind of big lot subdivisions to do the little tiny subdivisions. This kind of all predates me. This is what I recollect from looking at the files. This particular lot was part of the, where the Springs is at, and that is 2 lots over there. The pond itself is a lot, and then this is a lot. That was one subdivision. So that's
Okay.
the subdivision this particular subdivision is in. But there's no prohibition from subdividing a lot that's already been subdivided.
All right, thank you. A lot of the talk about traffic, I think we feel in totality across Whitefish. That's not just across from a sports complex. That's, we were just discussing Wisconsin Avenue. It's a constant thing. I live in a small neighborhood downtown, and we have people continuously parked both sides of the street. That's a parade day, that's any day, trying to shuffle cars for snow plows. So that to me doesn't have any impact on a future development that would have garages and, even though there may be no technical off-street parking, the general consensus is that there's consistent off-street parking there, so it is possible, even though it does not make the neighborhood better, it may not be possible during sporting events. And I think those are all considerations and things that need to be addressed in a lot of parts of Whitefish. I don't agree that one development should bear the impact of that. I think that that's a larger problem that needs to be voiced, definitely needs to be voiced consistently in front of this board, in front of the city council. So continue to come to every meeting that you can and say, you know, that parking is an issue, that traffic is an issue, even though one particular project may not trigger a traffic impact study, it still doesn't mean that it's not a big issue. So we recognize that. But in looking at this one particular project, aside from issues that are Whitefish as a whole, we have to look at the project as it is within the setting that it's in, but also within the regulations that we're given to weigh, does this meet the standards or not? So unless anybody else has a specific comment or question, I think we'll go ahead and take a vote
Whitney,
separately.
I do have one
Okay.
question for staff.
Go ahead, John.
Can you elaborate on the origins of the lawsuit? Was it the result of the subdivision application or conditional use permit?
He's not hearing your mic.
Sorry, I thought it was on or off before. Can you elaborate on the history of the lawsuit? What the origin of that was? If it was related specifically to the conditional use permit, to the commercial use? There was just no language in the report on that. I do think it's important, however, that the state Supreme Court sided with the applicant. I mean, that's a pretty substantial weighted opinion, I guess I would say, so.
His lawyer is here. He could, you know, better communicate the merits of the lawsuit. It's been 5 years. I don't remember.
Okay, well, public's closed now, so, but that's okay. Thank you.
And these are all things that can be, again, addressed at the city council meeting on March 4th. So I think unless there's any other comment from the board, we'll go ahead and take a vote, 2 separate votes. The first one on WCUP 2401, okay, we're going to allow one more comment before the vote.
Okay, about affordable housing. Could deny the conditional use permit on the basis that the WR4 zone, multiple family units, is more appropriate than townhouses. So I think if the board chose to, it could do that.
All right, thank you. Does anybody have anything else to add to that? Any response? All right. So we will vote yea or nay on the motion for WCUP 2401. It's been moved to approve and seconded. All in favor of that, raise your hand. All opposed? All right, so 4 yeas and 1 nay. And now WPP 2401, it was moved to recommend for approval and seconded. So all in favor of that, raise your hand. All opposed? All right, 4-1, that passes for recommendation. Several times. All right, so that concludes that public hearing, and again, that will be March 4th at 6 o'clock, the regularly scheduled. It'll be part of the public hearings before the city council. And moving on, any matters for good and welfare from the board? All right, seeing none. Any matters from staff for good and welfare?
No, we're just going to adjourn and move into the council conference room for our training.
All right, do we need a poll for who's going to be here next? Okay, what's the date of Date of the next meeting?
March 21st.
Okay. Oof.
You're going to be out of town?
I have it on my calendar already.
Okay, does anybody know that they will not be available? All right, looks like everyone who is here will be here again. Thank you all for coming. Goodbye. All right, that concludes our meeting.